Billionaire dad surprised. When Black Waitress teaches his autistic daughter to dance at Party Raven, Mitchell never imagined that one hum beneath a chandelier could upend the lives of everyone at the Jade Swan. Yet, that is exactly what happened. She was a 26-year-old Black waitress who spent nights balancing tiramisu trays and days volunteering at a shuttered community studio. Across the linen ocean of a private banquet, 9-year-old Lily Whitaker, only child of venture titan Grant Whitaker, sat frozen, noise-canceling buds pressed to her ears. The dining room sparkled with florals and finance gossip, but between Raven and Lily stretched an invisible ditch no one cared to cross. Raven had heard the gossip about the girl's selective mutism, difficult behaviors 3 specialists dismissed in 6 months. She had also heard the resigned baritone of Grant telling anyone who asked that Lily simply wouldn't dance. Raven should have kept her head down. Celeste Young, the restaurant's white-gloved manager, made sure staff understood the difference between serving and being noticed, but muscle memory betrayed her. While refilling a water glass, she caught Lily's vacant gaze and answered it with the tiniest hum, a lullaby rhythm her grandmother once used to calm subway commutes. A single tap of Lily's index finger against the linen was her reward. The moment crackled. Raven set the pitcher aside, crouched, and spoke softly. No promises. Just a chance. She retreated 2 paces, letting her shoulders sway, left-right pause, as though the ballroom itself had become a metronome. Lily's knees unbent a centimeter feet, shifting like timid punctuation marks. Across the table, Grant's phone hovered mid-scroll. His eyes lifted confused. Polite laughter stalled. Champagne flutes steadied mid-air. Celeste materialized on stiletto heels. "Miss Mitchell," she hissed, voice all marble polish. "You're here to serve, not entertain." Raven's pulse hammered, but she kept her tone even. "She isn't my audience. She's my answer." She inched sideways, shielding Lily without touching her. Grant's voice slashed the tension. "She stays." His gaze never left Raven, but something in it softened, as though seeing the fragile thread connecting waitress and daughter for the first time. Celeste blinked, jaw flexing, then withdrew like a curtain, ceding the stage. Lily mimicked the sway again, one deliberate trembling arc, and for 12 beats, Raven matched her. No applause, no commands, only shared breath. When Lily's lips parted in the shadow of a smile, Grant's throat worked, his hand closing over his cufflink, as though anchoring himself. A stray guest began clapping. Others followed in hesitant ripples that died away the instant Raven signaled a gentle stop. The child's comfort mattered more than crowd approval. Minutes later, the banquet resumed its orchestrated gloss, but a different current hummed beneath it. Grant caught Raven polishing glassware at the bar. He slipped her a silver-edged card. "Private sessions," he said, voice now quiet, almost hopeful. "Name your rate." Raven's bank account was overdrafted. Rent demanded numbers her tips could not meet. Yet dignity held firm. 24 hours to consider, she replied. Surprise flickered behind his composure. Then he nodded once, as if people rarely negotiated with him, and retreated into the velvet crowd. Out back, snow had begun to fall, fat silent flakes layering the alley's dumpsters in temporary purity. Raven exhaled a plume of breath and wondered whether she had just saved or shattered her fragile routine. Inside her pocket, Grant's card warmed against her palm like a pulse. 2 blocks away, in a chauffeured sedan, Lily pressed her forehead to the window, replaying the waitress's hum in a soft monotone. Grant watched her from the opposite seat, questions ricocheting through decades of control. He had spent fortunes hiring experts to pull his daughter into a world she refused. A stranger with a song had coaxed her out in 30 seconds. That night, Raven lay awake in her studio apartment, above a laundromat, listening to pipes groan through thin walls. The city outside roared with ambulances and late-night taxis. Yet beneath it, she heard Lily's tentative footfalls echoing her sway. She opened her phone's recorder, hummed the same lullaby into the speaker, and saved the file under a new title, First Step. At 3 a.m., she texted the number on Grant's card. "I'll take the chance on one condition: she leads the pace." The reply arrived before dawn. Only 2 words agreed. Tomorrow. Raven smiled into the cheap ceiling light, unaware that tomorrow would also bring the first viral clip, the first accusation, and the blueprint for a sanctuary she hadn't yet dared to imagine. The next sunrise found Raven pacing outside a limestone townhouse on Riverside Drive, her coat still speckled with melting snow. Grant answered the door himself, tieless eyes red-rimmed from a night of replaying that dance on loop. He only said, "She's in the solarium," then stepped back, as though afraid any directive might fracture the fragile magic. Lily sat in a beanbag, stuffed against tall windows earbuds, out-tracing raindrops with her finger. Raven didn't speak. She lowered herself onto the hardwood cross-legged close enough to feel the girl's breath, but far enough to leave space. She pressed play on the voice memo she'd recorded at 3 a.m. The lullaby floated up. Nothing happened for 16 heartbeats. Then, Lily's foot began a slow, half-circle drawing an invisible moon on the floor. Raven mirrored no bigger, no faster. 10 minutes later, Grant peeked in. What he saw made him fumble for his phone. A tiny pirouette. Lily's first, her hair lifting from her shoulders like a promise. He recorded 30 seconds cheeks wet, before he realized he was crying. By week 3, Lily greeted Raven at the door with a whispered, "Hi," a word Grant hadn't heard clearly since kindergarten. He filmed again for progress tracking. He said, though, the smile behind the lens gave him away. Raven warned him not to share anything without Lily's approval. Grant nodded, but later forwarded a clip to his sister, a pediatric neurologist in Austin, begging for insight. 2 nights after that, the video surfaced on a parenting subreddit titled, "Billionaire's Mute Daughter Speaks Through Dance." An influencer stitched it, adding slow-motion hearts. Within 24 hours, it had 3 million views, and Raven's name was trending beside speculative headlines. Unlicensed savior or clever grifter camera crews swarmed the Whitaker Gate. A gossip site claimed Raven and Grant were secretly dating. Raven's landlord taped the article to her door with a note rent extension, "If you sign my kid's cast." At the Jade Swan, Celeste cornered her in the service alley. "I could have monetized that moment," she sneered. "You wasted it on sentiment." Then she hinted at a performance science startup looking for consultants. Raven ignored her, but the words clung like grease. Grant offered to move sessions to a family estate upstate safe from lenses. Raven counteroffered, "What Lily needs can't hide forever. Let's build a place where the lenses don't matter." She sketched her idea on a napkin: open floors, sensory corners, percussion walls, pulse house. A name she wrote almost without thinking. Grant stared, calculating, then made one call. The next evening, they toured a derelict music hall in Harlem, sunlight slanting through cracked skylights onto warped maple boards. "The bones sing," Raven said, and Grant, whose world usually spoke in stock tickers, heard it too. While deeds transferred and contractors measured, Celeste re-emerged online fronting Aurora Path, a Westchester clinic, promising evidence-based euphoria and name-dropping donors who liked the ring of VR headsets and patentable algorithms. She peppered parent forums with warnings. Pulse House run by Waitress with no credentials. Risky, anonymous profiles echoed her concern. Raven's inbox filled with invitations to defend herself on talk shows. She declined them all, choosing to film a 1-minute phone video instead. In it, she said only, "Connection isn't choreography. It's consent, breath, and listening." She ended with Lily's laugh, off-camera, sweet and short. The clip never went viral, but donations landed from bus drivers, nurses, a retired ballerina, who mailed a check wrapped in point shoe ribbon. 2 months after that first hum, Pulse House opened its doors for a quiet pilot day. No red ribbon, no press. Omar Ruiz, the subway drummer Raven once tipped with coffee, pounded a heartbeat on conga skins. Retired teacher Rosa Delaney led parents to a tea-scented lounge. Lily walked in last, carrying 2 silk scarves, one purple, one white. She handed purple to Raven White, to a shy boy named Caleb, and began to spin them both into the air. Raven watched Grant in that instant, sleeves rolled, tie-forgotten phone, nowhere in sight, Simply clapping the rhythm Lily set. Outside, paparazzi still lurked, but inside the music hall the only lens that mattered was the child's widening gaze as she claimed the room. The first official heartbeat of Pulse House registered at 86 decibels and felt to everyone present like thunder, politely holding the door open for dawn. The thunder never quite settled. Week after week, that 86 decibel boom echoed as raw numbers 10 new families enrolled. 3 kids spoke first words. 1 brittle marriage thawed in Pulse House's parent lounge over jasmine tea. Grant installed a simple bell by the door. Every fresh breakthrough earned a single chime, and by mid-month, the bell rang like a commuter train. Yet success carried static. Celeste's glossy Aurora Path launched with drone footage and LED walls. Their promo video featured white-coated neurocurators guiding children in VR headsets, while ticker text promised measurable joy in 6 sessions. Parents on Facebook asked whether Pulse House offered the same scientific safeguards. Omar laughed. Our safeguard is heartbeat, but Raven felt the tremor. Enrollment inquiries slowed. 2 mothers canceled sighting distance, though Westchester was farther. Late one evening, Rosa slid her phone across the front desk. Dance of delusion. How feel good. Guru's exploit. Special needs kids glared back. The byline, an Aurora staffer. The article mined Raven's Waitress past, mocked Omar's subway credentials, cast Grant as a lonely widower, manipulated by performative empathy. Raven's throat dried, but she read every word. Then she opened a blank document and poured out a 600-word answer in one breath. Connection isn't choreography. It is permission breath and shared silence. You can graph dopamine spikes all day. What matters is the child who reaches instead of recoils. She posted it to Pulse House's bare-bones site. No hashtags, no photo. By dawn, the statement had only 3,000 reads, but the comment section brimmed with night shift nurses, an Afghanistan vet, and a ballet master who wrote, "I remember the first time a note changed my spine. Keep playing." Donations small as $5 and large as $20,000 landed within 48 hours. Celeste countered with parent influencer brunch's free charcuterie in exchange for honest reviews. Pulse House countered with nothing. There was work to do. Raven spent mornings chasing Grants, afternoons matching Lily's new favorite pattern, 3 lunges, 1 spin for a toddler named Nari. She slept on studio mats more than in her apartment. But scrutiny evolved. A polite man with a clipboard arrived unannounced, claiming to verify emergency egress. 2 days later, a zoning questionnaire appeared by certified mail, citing an anonymous complaint that the music hall was operating as a medical facility without license. Grant offered legal artillery. Raven opted for transparency. She uploaded every permit staff resume and fire drill log to the website under a tab titled Receipts. It impressed parents, but also drew more eyes. One rainy Thursday, the bell failed to ring at all. Caleb, usually first through the door, was absent. His mother had accepted Aurora's free month offer. Omar punched a conga harder than usual, the sound echoing like a scold. Lily noticed. She set down her scarves, walked to the entrance, and rang the bell herself, once firmly, then returned to class without a word. The staff followed her lead. Each rang it, teacher's janitor, even Grant. The hallway filled with overlapping peals that said, "We're still here." Inspired Raven announced a neighborhood open day. No speeches, she told the team. Just doors wide and drums loud. She mailed hand-drawn flyers, not glossy postcards inviting skeptics to watch, touch, listen. Celeste posted a sneer on Instagram. Some places market noise as therapy. We prefer data. Raven screenshot it, printed it, taped it above her desk as fuel. The night before the event, she walked the darkened hall, counting breaths instead of doubts. At the front door, she paused, hearing distant thunder, not from weather, but from her own pulse, then whispered, "Tomorrow, they'll see what numbers miss." At 8 a.m., sharp, the first knock rattled the glass. 3 officials in city badges waited beside a fire inspector with a camera. Clipboards out, They requested immediate access to every room. Raven exhaled, opened the door wide, and gestured them in. "Welcome to Pulse House," she said. "Feel free to measure the heartbeat." The inspectors fanned out like chess pieces, their boots squeaking on the polished maple, just as neighborhood open day's first families arrived. Raven shadowed them, answering questions: capacity exit, width, electrical load, while Omar kept the conga line pulsing to mask the bureaucratic drag. Children eyed the clipboards, but followed Lily's lead. She threaded the purple scarf through her fingers and kept swaying as if to say, "My song won't pause for paperwork." By noon, the main studio thrummed with bodies. Skeptical teachers, grandmothers, 2 subway cops on lunch break, even an Aurora Path recruiter who tried to blend into the crowd. Rosa handed visitors cups of cinnamon tea, explaining that scent calms startle reflexes better than any headset. When a toddler named Milo kicked off his shoes and spun in delighted circles, the inspectors glanced up from their laser measurers. One actually smiled. At 1:43 p.m., the lead official approached Raven. Fire exits clear, occupancy safe zoning, consistent with community arts. He initialed a form, tore off the yellow copy, and pressed it into her palm. No citations, just compliance and a wary respect. The bell by the door chimed once as he left, struck this time by Lily herself, who beamed at Raven like she'd just checkmated bureaucracy. That small victory bloomed into something wilder. Parents drifted from watching to joining. A banker tapped bongos. A teen, holding his non-verbal brother's hand, hummed to match the floor rhythm. Pulse House became the instrument its name promised. Grant stood against the far wall, phone-pocketed jaw slack with wonder. He hadn't orchestrated this. Raven had simply opened the door. Then Celeste swept in, wearing Aurora's seafoam blazer, flanked by a videographer. She clapped too crisply, complimented the grassroots energy, and announced Aurora's free Founders Month transportation, neuro assessments, VR modules, all on the house. She distributed glossy cards like confetti, smirked as parents pocketed them. Raven refused a card. Celeste only widened her smile. "Growth requires polish," she purred. "Call when you outgrow story time." She left before Raven could answer, camera catching her exit. That night, 3 Pulse families emailed regrets. The lure of scientific guarantees was hard to ignore. Raven read the messages in the dark office, Omar dozing on a crash mat nearby. She drafted no rebuttal, only scheduled extra percussion tomorrow, in case the room felt thinner. The thinning came faster. Next morning, Lily arrived early, clutching a newspaper clipping headlined, "Waitress Guru Draws, Billionaire Favoritism." In the lounge, a departing mother whispered, "Our son needs structure, not a mascot." Lily heard. She slipped into the supply closet and refused to come out. Raven found her curled among ribbon spools, eyes wet. "Did I break it?" Lily whispered. "Break what? The fair. They think you like me. More." Raven knelt. "I learn you differently. That's not more. And fair doesn't mean equal stamps. It means equal chances." Lily traced circles on her sleeve. "If I stop coming, do they stay?" Raven's chest pinched. "Pulse House isn't a pie, Lil. You leaving won't feed others. It would only make the music quieter." Outside the closet, Grant waited, torn between fury and shame. Raven shook her head, not anger, assurance. He crouched beside Lily, offered the bell from the doorway. "Ring it for anyone who's scared," he said. "Even me." Lily took the brass handle, marched into the hall, and struck once. The note echoed like a starting gun. Staff and students gathered, following her cue with their own rings, taps, claps, until the corridor vibrated. No speech, no hashtags, just a living metronome proclaiming space enough for us all. But resolve could not pay invoices or erase Aurora's billboards sprouting along the expressway. Rosa's arthritis flared. Omar's metro permit expired. Grant's lawyers flagged rising liability insurance. Raven stared at spreadsheets past midnight, vision blurring. Yet the memory of Lily's steady strike kept her upright. She drafted an email titled, "What Numbers Miss?" and sent it to every parent. Transparent finances, outcomes, chart volunteer shifts, and one promise: "Your child will never audition for belonging." Replies trickled in some grateful, some non-committal one, ending with, "We're trying Aurora, but may return." Each word felt like a loose brick, yet Raven wrote back with grace. At week's close, the bell rang fewer times, but each chime landed heavier, purposeful, as though Pulsehouse were forging itself into something denser than hype, an alloy of resilience and deliberate care. Still in the hush after closing, Raven touched the yellow compliance slip in her pocket and admitted to Grant Thunder, "Sounds grand, but steady rain feeds the roots. We need roots fast." Grant nodded, eyes on Lily, coloring scarves into a sunrise. "Then, let's start digging." Digging in Grant's lexicon meant wiring funds. In Raven's, it meant showing work. Before dawn, she pinned a schedule on the lobby wall: parent co-ops for snack prep volunteer shifts, for sensory room cleaning weekend workshops led by anyone with a craft or instrument. Roots, she told the staff, are hands in the soil, not just names on a plaque. By midday, the sign-up sheet was half filled: postal clerks, yoga retirees, a saxophonist who owed Omar a favor. 3 nights later, those roots were tested. A storm front rolled through thunder growling over Harlem, while Raven finished payroll math in the office. At 11:07 p.m., her phone buzzed, "Fire alarm, rear lot." She sprinted outside. Flames licked up a trash bin, heat blistering the back fence. 2 passing cyclists had already dialed 911. By the time engines wailed up the block, the blaze was mostly smoke. No interior damage, but the air reeked of accelerant. On the pavement lay a melted length of purple ribbon. The next morning, children arrived to caution tape and ash. Raven could have hidden the evidence. Instead, she placed the charred ribbon inside a glass shadow box and propped it on the reception counter. This is what fear tries. A hand-lettered card read, "Watch us answer." Parents lingered, some with tears, some with clenched jaws. One father, ex-Marine, offered evening patrol. Rosa organized a rotating watch list before lunch. Media sniffed opportunity. A local anchor camped on the sidewalk, camera aimed at blackened boards, asking if Pulsehouse was spiraling out of control. Raven declined live comment, but handed over printed sheets detailing fire safety compliance. The station aired 15 seconds anyway, close-ups of scorch marks, ominous music under the phrase, "target of controversy." Donations dipped, insurance premiums spiked. 3 days later, a letter on Department of Children and Families letterhead arrived, naming Ms. Helena Elkins as lead investigator for a conflict of interest and safety review. Grant's jaw set when he read it. "They're questioning you because I write checks." Raven squeezed the bridge of her nose. "Or because someone keeps feeding them smoke." Celeste's shadow hovered, but they had no proof. Elkins appeared that Friday at 9 a.m., sharp, tall, steel-haired eyes that missed nothing. She carried a leather binder and a portable scanner. "I will observe, interview, and request documents. Full cooperation appreciated." Her voice held neither warmth nor hostility. It was pure calibration. For 48 hours, she shadowed every corner: Omar's drum circle, Rosa's T-Chats volunteer scrubbing floors. She measured decibels, noted staff-to-child ratios, inspected emergency routes, pausing by the glass box to study the ribbon without comment. Children felt the tension. Giggles dimmed. Lily, sensing cracks in grown-up armor, retreated into near silence. On the second afternoon, Elkins asked to witness a session between Raven and Lily. Primary subject of donor concern, she explained. The girl stood motionless in the studio, clutching 2 fresh scarves, a white one, and the faintest lavender. Raven swallowed nerves, nodded at the silent observer, and began to hum the subway lullaby. Lily didn't mirror at first. She closed her eyes, listening. Raven let her weaving the scarves in slow figure eights, leaving gaps like open doors. After a minute, Lily stepped forward, tapped Raven's elbow, "Twice your tempo, my turn," and guided the scarves into sharper angles. 3 lunges, 1 spin, the pattern she'd gifted Nari. Raven followed. No lead, no lag, just equality in motion. Mid-phrase, Lily stopped, pointed to the charred box visible through the doorway, then wrapped both scarves around Raven's wrist and hers, knotting them gently. She looked at Elkin's voice, barely louder than fabric. Safe. One word, whole universe. Session ended there. Elkins closed her binder, asked no immediate questions, and left before sunset. Monday morning, a sealed envelope awaited on Raven's desk. Inside, a single-page summary. Findings. No regulatory violations. Facility operates within community arts classification. Staff background checks current. Notes. Recommend written role definitions and optional partnership with licensed therapists for expansion. Handwritten postscript. Children need safe people more than perfect systems. Continue. Raven read the line aloud to Grant, Omar, and Rosa. Relief rippled, but didn't burst. They were too tired for fireworks. Instead, Omar struck the lobby bell, once steady resonant. Lily echoed with the lavender scarf tied to the handle, the sound carrying through newly rinsed halls like a promise sown from smoke. Outside, reporters shifted to fresher scandals, but Pulse House's evening patrols remained. Roots weren't only hands in soil, they were eyes at dusk drums after dark, a glass box on the counter, reminding everyone why they kept watering the ground. Even with evening patrols posted, Pulse House began to creak with human fatigue. Omar, who took the midnight shift twice a week, nodded off during a Tuesday rhythm class and woke mortified at the sight of Lily tapping his drum to keep time. Rosa's arthritic wrists swelled until she could no longer pour tea without pain. Diane, clipboard queen and scheduling backbone, started coming in late paper bag, clutched to hide the tremor of exhaustion. The fire had been doused, the investigation cleared, yet the slow burn of burnout spread. Raven felt it most when the lobby bell rang, less out of triumph than obligation. Families still celebrated breakthroughs, but the staff's applause sounded thin, like wind through loosened shutters. Roots, she reminded herself, need water. She drafted grant proposals long after the children left fingers stiff over spreadsheets, while Grant paced the office reciting cost projections. At 1 a.m., she finally spoke, the thought both had skirted. Money isn't the only shortage anymore. It's bandwidth. If I drop the trunk splits. Grant exhaled. He'd been waiting for her to admit vulnerability, and slid a folder across the desk. Read in the morning, he said. It's a way to share the weight. She didn't wait. The folder outlined a governing board, rotating volunteer corps, and bolded in Grant's neat all-caps, CO Director. Beneath were 3 suggested names. The first was Omar. He thanked her, but had accepted a full-time arts and schools offer with benefits he couldn't refuse. The second was Rosa, who laughed until tears leaked, wiggling her bandaged fingers as proof she was retiring, not rising. The third name shocked Raven. Marcus Hayes, a certified behavioral therapist who had once dismissed dance therapy as sentimental gymnastics. He'd been visiting Pulse House on weekends to observe the post-investigation calm, and Grant explained had quietly sent notes, applauding its evidence of sensory-driven autonomy. That same week, Diane asked for a private talk. Offer on the table, Director of Community Programming for the city's new Child Development Initiative stable salary policy, impact fewer midnight alarms. I believe in Pulse, she said, voice breaking, but I also believe in scaffolding change from inside the system. Raven hugged her grief, and pride braided tight. News of departures hit just as Celeste announced Aurora Path's grand demonstration at the annual Children's Wellness Gala VR Pods, showcasing empathy algorithms. Invitations fluttered across social feeds. Pulse parents forwarded them nervously, wondering if they should attend. Grant received a speaker slot for corporate donors. He offered to decline. Raven surprised him. We go, she said. Not to fight Sparkle with Sparkle, just to show lungs still beat louder than batteries. Gala night draped Gotham Hall in silk and LED blue. Raven wore a thrift store midnight dress Grant had quietly tailored. Inside, Aurora's pods gleamed like chrome eggs, while Celeste posed mic'd and radiant. She spotted Raven and raised a champagne flute in mocking salute. Raven ignored her studying guests' forced smiles as volunteers strapped children into headsets. When the host called Grant to the stage for closing remarks, he strode up, thanked the board, and said, "Progress is best shown, not told, so I'll yield my time to someone who listens better than I speak." Raven Mitchell. The room hushed. Celeste's smile froze. Raven climbed the steps, heels trembling, and gripped the podium. "I waited tables for years," she began, voice low, but steady. "And I learned that most people taste their meal long before the food arrives through atmosphere tone, and whether someone bothers to look them in the eye. Children are no different. Movement is their first language. Safety is the table where they learn to speak." She paused, letting silence steep. At Pulse House, no one straps them into tech promising miracles. We give them room rhythm and permission to lead. The data. One little girl who once lived behind earbuds now rings a bell for strangers finding their own music. Applause rose tentative, then rolling until half the crowd stood. Cameras pivoted from chrome pods to Raven's unfashionable dress and unpolished truth. Celeste's PR handler yanked her toward a side exit. Backstage, Marcus Hayes awaited with hands jammed in pockets. "I haven't clapped that hard since my residency match," he said. "Your model turns half my field on its head, and I'd like to help keep it upright." His grin was shy, but his resume vast. Raven shook his hand, the relief like cool water on fevered skin. Grant watched satisfaction softening every sharp edge of his suit. 2 mornings later, Marcus shadowed classes, debriefed volunteers, drafted potential funding matrices, and most critically sat cross-legged with Lily, while she taught him the 3 lunge 1 spin code. At noon, he rang the lobby bell once and said, "If you'll have me, I'm in." Omar returned that evening for a celebratory drum jam. Rosa brewed tea despite her braces. Even Diane, packing boxes for City Hall, dropped by to knot a ribbon around Marcus's wrist. That night, Raven stood under the hush of Pulse House's empty studio glass box, glinting in corner light. The building still smelled faintly of smoke, but also of cedar from the new beams Marcus had ordered to reinforce the roof. She closed her eyes and breathed. Thunder was grand, yes, but the steady rain had finally come. Roots drank deep. The cedar scent lingered through December, coating the rafters, the way frost coated Harlem stoops. Pulse House woke each morning to the muffled hush of snow, and the new cadence Marcus brought: staff rotations, reflective debrief circles, grant tracker spreadsheets, color-coded sunflower yellow, so nobody feared the numbers. Roots were drinking, yes, but now they were learning to pump water on their own. On the first anniversary of Open Day, Raven arrived to find Lily standing in the lobby, wearing a homemade sash paper glitter glue, the word "host" scrawled crookedly across it. By her feet waited a basket of earplugs sorted by color. "I'm the welcome bell today," she declared, ringing the brass handle once for emphasis. Raven swallowed a sudden lump. A year ago, the child had hidden in a supply closet. Now, she greeted strangers. Families poured in, some old, some curious, some returning after an Aurora trial month. Marcus guided tours, pointing to new sensory nooks, and to the cedar beams he'd insisted on for psychological ballast. Omar, between public school shifts, led a drum procession through the hall. Rosa, wrists braced, but eyes bright, presided over Story Corner, reading a picture book Lily had illustrated, ribbons dancing across skylights. Every few minutes, Lily's bell chimed a soft metallic heartbeat. Mid-afternoon, Grant called Raven to the quiet office. On his laptop glowed a headline: "Aurora Path faces lawsuit after child panic episode in VR pod." Celeste's silver smile was captured mid-blur beside a crying boy and his furious mother. Grant clicked the lid down. "The wind changed," he said, half grim, half relieved. Raven shook her head. "We don't move by their weather." She opened the office door wider, so laughter spilled in, swallowing the schadenfreude. Evening settled in candle warm. Parents, staff, and children gathered beneath the ribbon tree, now twice its original height, limbs crowded with silk testimonials. Rosa raised a mug of ginger tea. To every small voice that taught a bigger world to hush and listen, she toasted. Marcus followed, announcing the formation of 3 satellite workshops in Queens, Newark, and pending permits Brooklyn, each modeled on Pulse House, but bearing its own neighborhood name. Replication without dilution, he promised. Raven felt pride bloom like sudden sun after snow. Then, Lily tugged Raven's sleeve, offering a fresh ribbon, pale white. "No word on it," she whispered. "Just your space." Raven tied the blank strip near eye level, rubbing the silk between her fingers. She realized she didn't need to write trust or safe. The blankness itself testified. After the ceremony, staff dimmed lights. Children bundled into coats. Parents lingered for one last cup of tea. Outside, snowflakes spiraled beneath street lamps, and Marcus locked the gate with new confidence. Raven and Grant stood on the stoop, while Lily traced snow angels onto fresh powder. "What's next for you?" Grant asked. Rest, Raven sighed, meaning it for once. "Then drafting the Pulse Handbook with Marcus, so no one has to reinvent this wheel again." He smiled, coat collar lifting in the wind. "You're not worried about losing the magic?" "The magic," she answered, watching Lily's arms sweep arcs across snow, "was never mine to lose." Inside, the studio was dark, but the cedar held warmth, and the glass box on the counter still cradled the charred ribbon, now flanked by 2 new relics. A cracked VR visor donated by the lawsuit family, a reminder of hubris, and a tiny bronze bell engraved with the date of Lily's first greeting shift. Raven switched off the final lamp, leaving those artifacts illuminated only by moonlight. Together, they told the whole arc-spark smoke sound growth. She stepped back into the night, where Lily finished her angel fabrics of her sash fluttering like wings. Marcus called from the curb that the van was loaded with drums. Rosa waved a thermos, promising morning chai. Raven inhaled the city air, cold electric unfiltered, and felt no tremor of collapse, only expansion, as if the heartbeat inside the brick walls now thudded in distant burrows, waiting to be named. She rang Lily's handbell once more, a declaration rather than a farewell, and the note sailed into the snowy hush, meeting a dozen faint echoes from parents relaying it down the block. Pulse House did not close that night, so much as ripple outward. Steady rain turned river roots, turned seeds. And in that spreading hush, Raven finally heard the lullaby she'd hummed a year ago, return to her on neighborhood wind. No longer hers exactly, but a chorus she'd merely started.